She found out she was pregnant alone, on the floor of a gas station bathroom in rural Tennessee, holding a plastic test strip under a flickering light, while the man who put that child inside her had already told her she was dead to him. No warning, no hearing, no chance to speak. Damien Voss, the most feared name in the city, looked her in the eyes and said two words that ended everything. "Get out." And Harlow Bennett walked away. But some things don't stay buried. Some secrets grow legs, and 4 years later the past came back, not with a phone call, not with a letter, but with strangers showing up at her children's school. If this story already has your heart racing, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The bathroom smelled like diesel fuel and old bleach. One of the fluorescent tubes overhead buzzed and flickered in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate, like it was counting down to something. Harlow Bennett sat on the tile floor with her back against the wall and her knees pulled up to her chest, and she stared at the thin pink line on the pregnancy test like it was written in a language she did not know how to read. Outside, an 18-wheeler pulled into the lot. The engine cut. Boots scraped across asphalt. Harlow did not move. She had been sitting there for 11 minutes. She knew because she had been watching the time on her phone, not because she was tracking it, but because looking at the clock was easier than looking at the test. The phone showed a cracked screen she had not gotten around to fixing. She had not gotten around to a lot of things lately. Her life had developed a habit of breaking faster than she could repair it. The positive line was faint, but it was there. She had taken the test twice already, both from the same box she paid for in cash at the counter, the cashier not looking up once. The second result matched the first. She sat there holding the evidence of something she had not planned, had not asked for, and could not undo. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the night Damien Voss told her to leave. She pressed the back of her head against the tile wall and closed her eyes. The memory came without invitation, the way the worst memories always did. She had been standing in his study on the 14th floor of the building everyone called the Tower, his legitimate front, all steel and glass. And the room had been so quiet she could hear her own breathing. Damien stood behind his desk. He did not sit. He never sat when he was delivering something final. Victor Reiner stood to the left. His hands were folded in front of him. His face held the expression of a man controlling a grief he did not feel. "We have everything we need," Victor had said, calm, measured, like he was reporting weather. Damien's eyes did not leave Harlow's face. That was the part she kept returning to. The way he looked at her, not with rage, not even with contempt, but with something worse. Disappointment, already calcified into certainty. "Is it true?" he said. Not a question, a formality. "Damien, is it true?" She had tried to speak. She had tried to give him the words that would crack the wall going up behind his eyes, but her throat locked, and the silence stretched, and by the time she found her voice, he had already looked away. "Get out," he said. "Don't contact anyone here. Don't come back." Victor stepped to the side to open the door. Always efficient, always helpful. The performance of a loyal second-in-command executed to perfection. Harlow walked out. She did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry in the parking garage. She cried in her car, with both hands gripping the steering wheel and the engine running until her chest ached from it. Then she wiped her face. She drove. She thought about that now, sitting on the bathroom floor in Tennessee. She thought about how she had loved him for 7 months and he had ended it in under 4 minutes. She thought about how she had spent those 7 months learning the shape of him, how he took his coffee, how his voice lowered when he was worried but pretending he wasn't, how he held her hand under the table during dinner even when he was supposed to be impenetrable, how he laughed, actually laughed, when she said something unexpected. She thought about the man she had found underneath all the reputation and the fear, the man no one else ever seemed to reach. She thought about all of that, and then she looked at the test again. Harlow Bennett was 29 years old, a pediatric nurse practitioner with no savings, a month-to-month lease on an apartment she no longer lived in, and a positive pregnancy test that connected her permanently to a man who had thrown her away. She sat there until the buzzing light steadied itself, or maybe she just stopped hearing it. Then she stood up, wrapped the test in a paper towel, tucked it in her jacket pocket, washed her hands, and walked back out to her car. She drove north until she hit the Virginia state line. Then she stopped at a motel with an hourly rate and a vending machine that accepted crumpled bills, paid cash, and lay on top of the covers in her clothes staring at the water-stained ceiling. She had one contact she could call, one person who would not ask too many questions and would not connect back to anything in the city. Her sister Darlene in Asheville. She called at 2 in the morning. Darlene picked up on the second ring. Harlow? I need somewhere to go. A pause. Not surprise, just the pause of someone confirming they heard correctly. How long? I don't know. Okay, Darlene said. I'll make up the couch. Harlow closed her eyes. She did not explain. Darlene did not push. That was the unspoken contract between them, forged in years of surviving a family that required too much from both of them and gave back too little. Harlow arrived in Asheville on a Thursday in October, with one duffel bag and the jacket she had been wearing since she left the city. Darlene opened the door, looked her over once, and stepped back to let her in. You look like garbage, Darlene said. I feel worse than garbage. Kitchen's clean. There's soup in the pot. That was Darlene. No ceremony, no performance of concern. She just made soup and moved things out of the way. In the weeks that followed, Harlow slept, ate when she could, threw up regularly, and tried to organize the wreckage of what her life had become into something workable. She found a clinic. She went to the appointments alone. She sat in waiting rooms surrounded by women in various stages of their own complicated pregnancies, and she filled out paperwork and answered questions in the clipped professional shorthand of someone trained to manage health systems from the other side. She had spent years advocating for other people's children. Now she was sitting in a paper gown, waiting for her own first ultrasound. The technician was kind. She had probably done 10 of these already today. Here's the heartbeat, she said, pressing the wand gently. The sound filled the small room, fast, rhythmic, steady. Harlow heard it, and something in her chest gave way. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a wall she had been leaning against shifting a half-inch to the left. Strong signal, the technician said. Then reading the screen more carefully. Actually, hold on, let me just... Harlow felt the pause before the words. There are two. 2 heartbeats. 2. Not one. The technician turned the screen, 2 shapes, side by side, each with their own small pulse. Twins, she said. Harlow looked at the screen for a long time without speaking. She thought about Damien. She thought about Victor Rayner's folded hands. She thought about the moment Damien looked away. Okay, she finally said. Her voice held steady. A nurse's voice. A woman who had delivered terrible news to other families and learned to keep her face level regardless of what she felt. Okay, she said again. I can do that. She meant it. She was not sure if she believed it yet, but she meant it. The months that followed were the hardest she had ever lived through, and she had grown up in a house that gave her considerable preparation for hard things. Darlene's couch became the back bedroom when the duffel bag made it obvious Harlow was not leaving soon. Harlow found part-time clinic hours. She handled the bureaucracy of setting up a new life, new address, new bank, new everything, with the methodical determination of someone who understood that survival was just a series of small administrative tasks completed in sequence. She did not tell anyone in the city where she went. She did not contact anyone from Damien's world. She thought about telling him. She thought about it constantly. Some mornings she would get as far as picking up her phone and scrolling to the number she still had memorized. She had never saved it in any device, just kept it coiled in the back of her mind like a piece of evidence. And she would hold the phone and think about the look on his face in that study, the way he had not even let her speak. She put the phone down every time. Darlene asked once, only once. They were doing dishes together a few months in, and Darlene handed her a bowl to dry and said, "The father, does he know?" Harlow kept drying. "No." "You gonna tell him?" "I don't know." Darlene nodded, went back to washing. "That's an answer too, I guess." Harlow said nothing. She gave birth in March, a Thursday which felt right somehow. That was the day she arrived in Asheville. 17 hours of labor, Darlene at her side the entire time, white-knuckling Harlow's hand through the hard contractions without once flinching. The girl came first. Harlow had already decided on the names, Sawyer, then Reed. The nurses placed them both against her at once, one on each side, and Harlow lay there in that hospital bed with both of her children against her chest and did not cry. She had already used up everything earlier. What she felt now was quieter than emotion. It was more like the moment after a very long run. The body having done everything it was built to do, gone completely beyond what seemed possible, and settled into a stillness on the other side of effort. These were hers. Whatever happened, whatever Damien Voss did or did not know, these were hers. She lay there in the blue-green light of early morning with both children breathing against her, and she made herself a promise. Not out loud, not dramatic, just inside, in the quiet space where she kept the decisions that actually counted. She was going to build something. She did. The first year was brutal in every practical sense. Money was always a calculation. Sleep was a problem she managed rather than solved. She and Darlene worked out an arrangement that was part rent, part childcare trade, part mutual survival pact. Harlow picked up more clinic hours as soon as she could return. She was good at her job, had always been good at her job, even when the rest of her life was falling apart. And the clinic needed someone with her combination of credentials and calm. She found a small rental house with a yellow front door about 6 months after the twins were born. It was 1,400 square feet and had a kitchen with a gas stove that had one burner that required 2 attempts to light, and a bathroom where the tile grout needed replacing, and a backyard with a crabapple tree that neither she nor the landlord had any intention of removing. She brought Sawyer and Reed home to it on a sunny afternoon in September, and she stood in the front room holding one of them in each arm and looked at the yellow door and thought, "This is enough." It was enough. That was the thing about enough. It surprised you. Harlow had grown up in a household that confused struggle with failure and comfort with weakness, and it had taken her a long time to understand that enough was not a compromise. It was a foundation. The years moved through her. Sawyer grew into a child who treated the world like a riddle she personally intended to solve, always first to speak in any room, always the one who needed to understand exactly why a rule existed before she would follow it. Reed was quieter, more interior. He watched before he moved. He made decisions carefully and then held to them with a stubbornness that reminded Harlow uncomfortably of herself at that age. She did not tell them about their father. They asked. Of course they asked. They were 4 years old, and children that age assembled the world by comparing it to other children's worlds. Other kids had dads. They asked about theirs with the matter-of-fact directness that only young children had, without drama, without accusation, just, "Where is our dad?" Harlow told them the truth at the edge of what was honest. Their dad was someone she had known a long time ago, somewhere far away, and they did not live near him. Sawyer accepted this and then asked 6 follow-up questions. Reed listened and then went back to the sticks he was arranging in the backyard. Harlow carried the guilt the way she carried most things, quietly and in the parts of the day when no one was watching. At 3 in the morning, when one of the kids had a fever. On the drive home from a long clinic shift when the highway was empty and the radio played something she was not listening to. In those moments, she thought about Damien, not with longing, not exactly, but with the specific weight of someone who has left a significant thing unresolved. She knew he had rights. She knew his children existed in the world without him knowing, and that was something she carried a portion of. But she came back always to the image of him turning away, not letting her speak, choosing certainty over her. She could not give her children a father who operated like that, so she kept the secret, and the secret kept. Until the call. She was in the middle of charting at the clinic. Late afternoon, the waiting room quiet now, most of the day's appointments finished, when her phone buzzed with Darlene's number. She answered it without thinking. Harlow. Darlene's voice was flat, not panicked. That was worse somehow. What happened? There was a woman at the school. She tried to take Sawyer and Reed. Harlow was already standing. She did not remember deciding to stand. She's gone now. The principal stopped it. The kids are fine. They're in the director's office. Harlow, I'm on my way. She was already moving, keys in her hand. What did she look like? Older, well-dressed. The teacher said she was very certain about who she was, said she was their grandmother. The word hit Harlow's chest like a hand pressed flat against a window. She stopped walking. She said what? She said she was their grandmother. She gave a name. Darlene paused. Valentina Voss. The lobby of the clinic went very quiet around Harlow. The receptionist looked up. Harlow was standing completely still. Harlow had never used Damien's last name, not once. She had filed the birth certificates under her own name. She had not contacted anyone from that world. Not a single person knew where she had gone. She had made sure of it, had been careful in a way that bordered on exhausting. Yet they had found her. They had found her children. Harlow? Darlene said. Harlow started walking again. Fast. Lock down everything at the house, she said. Don't open the door. I'll get the kids and I'll call you when I'm on my way home. Who is she? His mother, Harlow said. She ended the call. She pushed through the clinic door into the afternoon light and stood on the sidewalk for 3 seconds, breathing. Just breathing. The way she had stood in the gas station parking lot 4 years ago with the test result in her jacket pocket, letting the information settle somewhere in her body so she could move forward without shaking. Damien Voss knew about his children, or he was going to. She got in her car and drove to the school. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Her mind was not. 4 years of careful distance. 4 years of small, deliberate choices stacked one on top of the other, like the grout tiles she had never gotten around to replacing. 4 years of building something real and safe and entirely her own. Whatever Valentina Voss had done today, she had not done it alone. Harlow turned onto the school road and pressed her foot harder on the gas. Someone had sent that woman. Someone with the kind of resources that could find a pediatric nurse practitioner who had vanished into the mountains of North Carolina and track her children to a specific school on a specific afternoon. There was only one person with those resources, and 3 days later, he knocked on the yellow door. He knocked at 7:14 in the morning. Harlow knew the time because she had been awake since 4, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, listening to the house breathe around her. Sawyer and Reed were still asleep. The crabapple tree in the backyard moved in the early wind. The yellow door stood between her and everything she had spent 4 years running from. And when the knock came, 3 times, unhurried, not aggressive but absolutely certain of itself, her body recognized it before her mind did. She knew that knock. She set down the cold coffee. She crossed the front room in her socks. She put her hand on the deadbolt but did not turn it. "Who is it?" she said. A pause. Then, "You know who it is?" The voice was exactly the same, lower than she remembered, or maybe she had just spent 4 years slowly convincing herself it would sound different. She pressed her palm flat against the door for a moment, feeling the wood grain, feeling the cool of early morning still in it. She turned the deadbolt. She opened the door. Damien Voss stood on her porch in a charcoal jacket and dark trousers, no tie, his hands loose at his sides. He had aged in the places men aged when they stopped sleeping well. The lines at the corners of his eyes were deeper. There was something harder in the set of his jaw. But the posture was the same. The stillness was the same. He had always been a man who occupied space without apology, and 4 years had not changed that. He looked at her. She let him look. "You sent your mother to my children's school," she said. His jaw shifted. "I didn't." "Don't." "Harlow, see, do not stand on my porch and tell me you didn't know." He held her gaze and did not look away. That she had forgotten. That he never flinched from eye contact, not even when what was in your eyes was something he deserved. "She acted without my permission," he said. "I found out after." "And what did you do when you found out after?" A beat. "I came here." Harlow studied his face. She was good at reading people. Years of clinical work had sharpened something she had been born with, the ability to catch the small, involuntary signals that preceded the calculated ones. She read him now the way she read an anxious parent in a waiting room, looking for the thing beneath the thing being said. What she found surprised her. She had expected to find control, the careful management of expression that powerful men learned early. She found that too, but underneath it was something raw, something she did not have a clean word for. "Come back at 9, she said. "The kids will be at my sister's." She closed the door. She stood with her back against it for a moment in the quiet front room. Her heart was doing something irregular. She was aware of it the way you were aware of a sound in a wall. Present, slightly alarming, impossible to locate precisely. She went back to the kitchen, poured the cold coffee down the sink, and made a fresh cup. At 8:15, she drove Sawyer and Reed to Darlene's apartment. Sawyer asked 3 questions about where they were going and why, and whether Darlene would have the good cereal. Reed sat in his car seat, looking out the window with the expression of someone filing information away for later use. Harlow answered Sawyer's questions. She watched Reed in the rear-view mirror. She kissed them both at Darlene's door. Darlene looked at her over the kids' heads. "How long?" Darlene said. "I don't know. I'll call you." "Harlow." Darlene's voice dropped. "You don't have to let him in the door." "I know. Knowing and doing are different things with you." Harlow looked at her sister. Darlene had the kind of face that did not soften easily, built by the same childhood that had built Harlow's walls, but her eyes right now held something honest and worried. "I'll be fine," Harlow said. She drove back to the yellow door. Damien was sitting on the porch steps when she pulled up. He had not waited in a car. He had not stood on the sidewalk. He had sat down on her porch steps like a man who intended to wait however long it took, and there was something in that. Something that she refused to let mean anything until she understood what he actually wanted. She unlocked the front door without speaking to him. He followed her inside. The front room was small. She had furnished it carefully over the years. A couch she bought second-hand and recovered herself, bookshelves she had built from planks and brackets, drawings taped to the wall that the kids had made at school, a photograph of her and Darlene from before Asheville. It was a room that showed exactly who lived here and what they valued. She watched Damien take it in and made herself not care what he thought of it. "Sit down," she said. He sat in the chair across from the couch. She sat on the couch. She did not offer coffee. "How did you find us?" she said. He rested his forearms on his knees, looked at his hands for a moment, then back at her. "It took 2 years," he said. "That's not what I asked." "Someone who used to work the Eastern Corridor recognized you at a medical conference in Charlotte 14 months ago. They mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to me." He paused. "I didn't move on it right away." "Why not?" "Because I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I found you." The room was very quiet. Outside, the crabapple tree scraped one of its branches against the fence. "And your mother?" Harlow said. Something moved across his face. "She found out before I was ready to—" He stopped. "She acted on her own. I did not authorize it. I told her that clearly. She tried to take my children from their school." "I know." "She doesn't know my children. She has never met my children. She showed up at their school and told the staff she was their grandmother and tried to walk them out." "I know." His voice was level, but there was something underneath it that had weight. What she did was wrong. I'm not here to defend it. Harlow felt the anger move through her like heat, slow and thorough. "Why are you here?" she said. "Say it plainly." He looked at her. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. Not after what I did. Not after how I—" He stopped again, not for effect. More like the sentence had more weight than he was prepared for. "I have a son and a daughter who don't know I exist. I'm here because of that." Harlow said nothing. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said. "I'm not here to take them. I'm here because they are mine. And I have been walking around for 4 years not knowing they were alive. And I—" The sentence broke. He looked at the floor. When he looked back up, his face had reassembled itself, but not entirely. "I need you to understand what that's been." "You need me to understand," she said quietly. "Harlow, you need me to understand what it's been." Her voice did not rise. It did the opposite, dropped to something low and very precise. "I sat on a gas station floor in Tennessee holding a pregnancy test. I was 29 years old, and I had $43 in my account, and my apartment lease had 3 weeks left on it, and the man who told me he trusted me above everyone had just thrown me out without letting me say a single word." She held his gaze. I spent 17 hours in labor, alone. My sister held my hand. I filed 2 birth certificates under my name because I had no other option. I worked clinic hours 3 weeks after delivery because that was the only way to cover childcare. I have changed every fever, every nightmare, every first day of school, every skinned knee on a sidewalk. She paused. You need me to understand what it's been for you. He did not look away. He had gone very still. No, he said after a moment. I need you to know that I know I don't have a right to say that, and I said it anyway. That's on me. Harlow exhaled slowly through her nose. You told me to leave, she said. You looked me in the face and you told me to leave. You didn't ask me. You didn't let me explain. You made a decision and you shut the door. Yes. Why? He was quiet for a beat. Victor had documentation, he said. Transfers, contacts. He had phone records that showed your number connected to a burner used by the Callahan operation. I know that now. I never contacted anyone outside. I know. His voice was flat, not dismissive, heavy with knowing. Victor built it over 3 months. He had access to everything. He pulled your number from the internal directory and used it to set up a trail that would hold up under any review I ran. By the time he presented it to me, the evidence wasn't just convincing, it was airtight. Harlow felt something cold move through her chest. He framed me, she said. Yes. Why? Damien looked at her steadily. Victor had been diverting funds for 18 months. He needed someone positioned close enough to me that the blame would be catastrophic, someone I would react to without thinking. He stopped. He chose correctly. He chose correctly, she repeated, because you would absolutely believe it of me. Because I would react instead of think. The distinction was deliberate. He was not agreeing with her framing. He was offering his own, and she understood the difference. When did you find out? She said. 11 months after you left. One of the accountants in the Meridian branch flagged a discrepancy that didn't match any operation I had authorized. It unraveled from there. His jaw tightened. Victor had relocated by then. We found him 8 months later. Harlow waited. He's not a problem anymore, Damien said. She did not ask what that meant. She already knew. That was the world he lived in, the world she had understood when she was with him, the world she had chosen to step away from entirely. So you knew I was innocent, she said, almost 3 years ago. Yes. And you looked for me. Yes. But you didn't find me until someone recognized me at a conference. You were careful. There was something in how he said it, not quite admiration, too direct for that. Recognition. The name was different. The city was different. You didn't use any of the systems you used before. I used cash, she said. For the first year, I used cash for everything. I know. It's why it took as long as it did. She stared at him. She had spent 4 years being proud of how carefully she disappeared. She had spent 4 years believing she had made herself unfindable. And now she was sitting across from the man she had hidden from, and he was telling her that she had been right to be careful and that he had been looking the entire time. And the two facts sat side by side in the room between them like objects she did not know where to put. Get out, she said. He blinked. For right now. Go. I need you to not be in this house right now. She stood up. Come back tomorrow morning, same time. He looked at her for a moment, then he stood. Okay, he said. He moved to the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame and looked back at her once, and she read his face as clearly as she had read anything in the past 4 years. He had more to say, a great deal more, and he was choosing not to say it. That was new. The Damien Voss she had known would have pressed, would have stayed until he felt the conversation was complete. He left. Harlow stood in the middle of her front room and breathed, just breathed. The room was exactly as it had been, Sawyer's drawing on the wall, 3 figures she had labeled Mom, M.E., Reed in uneven crayon letters, Reed's collection of small, smooth stones in a dish on the windowsill, the couch she had recovered in gray fabric on a Saturday in November. She was still standing there when her phone rang. Darlene. He's gone? Darlene said when she answered. Yes. And? Harlow pressed her fingers against her sternum. He knew about the framing. He found out almost 3 years ago. Darlene was quiet for a moment. He told you that? Yes. And you believe him? Did she? She turned the question over. She thought about the way he had looked when he said it, not like a man performing contrition, not with the smooth edges of a prepared statement. He had said it like a man who had been living with it, like something he had worn down by carrying. I don't know what I believe yet, she said. Harlow. He could walk into any courtroom in this state and fight for visitation. You know that. I know. He didn't do that. I know. He came to your door. Harlow looked at the yellow door, closed now, the morning light coming through the narrow window beside it, and laying a stripe of gold across the floor. I know, she said. She called him that evening. He answered on the first ring, which told her he had been waiting for it. You said come back tomorrow, he said instead of hello. I'm changing the conditions, she said. You can come back tonight, 7 o'clock, but you're not meeting the kids. Not yet. Tonight we finish the conversation. A pause. Okay? And Damien? She kept her voice even. If you send anyone to this house, to this street, to anywhere near my children's school or my sister or my clinic, we're done. Whatever version of this you're imagining is done. Clear? Clear. 7 o'clock, she said. She cooked dinner for herself. She ate at the kitchen table. She thought about what she was doing and why she was doing it and whether the reasons she told herself were the real ones. She had been doing that for 4 years, examining her own motives with the same clinical attention she gave everything else. She did not always like what she found. She wanted her children to know their father. That was real. She had always wanted that, somewhere beneath the self-protective anger, and she was tired of pretending she had not. She also wanted answers, the kind that did not come from documentation or secondhand accounts, the kind you got by sitting across from someone and watching them while they talked. And underneath those two things, underneath the pragmatism and the maternal reasoning and the professional habit of looking for facts, there was a third thing she had been trying to bury for 4 years without notable success. She was still angry. Specifically, precisely, completely angry. The kind of anger that did not diminish with distance but simply went underground and kept growing in the dark. She needed him in the room to say what she had not yet said. He arrived at 7 exactly. She let him in. She made coffee this time. They sat at the kitchen table, which was smaller than the front room and left less space between them, and she looked at him across the surface of it and said the thing she had been waiting 4 years to say. You broke me, she said. Not broke me down. Not wounded me. You broke the thing I was trying to build before I even knew I was building it. And I had to take those pieces and make something else out of them, without you, without any help from you, without even the acknowledgement that it had happened. She held his gaze. I need you to understand that before we talk about anything else. Not apologize to me, not explain it, just understand it. Damien held her gaze for a long time. I understand it, he said. She waited for the qualifier, for the but, for the pivot toward his own version of the pain. It did not come. He simply said, I understand it, and held the weight of it without putting it down. Harlow looked at him across the kitchen table. The coffee steamed between them. Outside, the crabapple tree moved. She reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out her phone, unlocked it, turned it so he could see the screen. 2 small faces. A park. Sawyer with her mouth open, Reed looking at something off camera, with his particular serious expression, holding a stick. Damien's face did something she had not expected. It did not break dramatically. It did not perform. It simply changed. The way a held breath changed when it was finally released. His eyes moved over the image slowly, and his jaw tightened, and he said nothing for a long moment. Reed likes sticks, Harlow said. He always has. Since he could walk, he collects them. Damien said nothing. He was still looking at the photo. Sawyer talks constantly, Harlow said. She has opinions about everything. She argues. She's going to be a lawyer or a negotiator or something that involves making people agree with her whether they want to or not. Damien let out a short breath that was almost a sound, almost a laugh. And Reed, Harlow continued, Reed is quiet and careful, and he doesn't give his trust easily. She let that last sentence sit in the air between them. She watched him hear it. He looked up from the phone. His eyes met hers. Tell me what you need, he said, to let me meet them. Whatever the conditions are. Tell me. Harlow pulled the phone back. She held it in both hands and looked at the screen for a moment longer. She had one condition forming that she had not said yet. One that was non-negotiable, that she had been turning over all day, that was both practical and personal in a way she could not fully separate. She opened her mouth to say it. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen, an Asheville number she did not recognize. She answered it. Is this Harlow Bennett? A woman's voice. Professional, controlled, but with something underneath it. Yes. This is Judith Mon. I'm a senior administrator at Darlene Pickett's building. A pause, precisely the length of a pause that preceded unwelcome news. There's been an incident. Your sister is okay. I want to say that first, but she's asked us to contact you. She's asking you to come. Harlow was already standing. What kind of incident? She said. The woman on the phone told her. Harlow's hand tightened on the phone until her knuckles went pale. She ended the call and looked across the kitchen table at Damien Voss and said the only thing she could think to say, which was not a question but a statement. Someone went to my sister's apartment tonight, she said, while my children were there. Damien was on his feet before she finished the sentence. She did not wait for him to speak. She grabbed her jacket off the back of the kitchen chair and her keys off the counter, and she was already moving toward the door when he stepped in front of her. Not blocking her, not touching her, just present, close, his voice low and immediate. Tell me what they said. Exactly. Someone knocked on Darlene's door, said they were building management. When she opened it, there were two men. They didn't touch the kids. They didn't get inside. Darlene blocked the door, but they pushed through the frame far enough to... Her throat tightened. She pushed past it. Far enough to make it clear they could have. Damien's expression had gone completely still. Not calm. Still. The way a temperature dropped before a storm arrived. Did they say anything? The administrator didn't give me details. Darlene asked them to call me. She moved past him. I'm going. I'm coming with you. No. Harlow, you don't get to, Those are my children, he said. The sentence came out quiet. The quietest thing he had said all evening. Whatever else is between us, those are my children, and someone just showed up at the building where they are. I am coming with you. She stood with her hand on the doorframe. Her car was 20 feet away. Every functional instinct she had was running the calculation. Fastest route, traffic conditions, time since the call, whether the kids had been moved from the apartment. She looked at him. You drive, she said. His car was a black sedan, unmarked, nothing that announced itself. He drove fast and clean, the way people drove when they had learned it for operational reasons rather than preference. Harlow sat in the passenger seat with her phone to her ear, trying Darlene's number. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. She tried again, same result. She's not answering, Harlow said. Is there another number? The apartment landline. She pulled it from memory and dialed it. It rang twice, and a child's voice answered, Sawyer. Mom? A 4-year-old's voice doing its best to sound like nothing was wrong, which meant everything was wrong. Hey, baby. Harlow kept her voice level with everything she had. Are you and Reed okay? Aunt Darlene is talking to a man in the hall. She told us to stay inside and watch the tablet. Is the door closed and locked? Yes. Good girl, you stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Aunt Darlene. You understand? Yes. Where's Reed? Right here. A pause. He's holding a stick. He brought it inside. Harlow closed her eyes for 2 seconds. Okay, I'm on my way. Stay on the phone with me. Damien glanced at her. He had heard the whole thing. He pressed the accelerator and ran a yellow light without hesitation. They made it to Darlene's building in 11 minutes. Damien pulled up to the curb. Harlow was out of the car before it fully stopped. She went through the lobby door. The night attendant buzzed her in without question. He knew her face. And took the stairs because the elevator was slower and she could not stand still right now. 3rd floor. She came around the stairwell corner and found the hallway empty except for Darlene, standing outside her apartment door with her arms crossed and a bruise beginning to form along her left cheekbone. Harlow crossed the distance between them in 4 strides. "I'm fine," Darlene said immediately. "Don't. You're not fine. You have a... It's a bruise. The door frame caught me when they pushed. I've had worse." She said it flatly, meaning it, and Harlow believed her because it was true, and that truth lived in both of them from the same source. "The kids?" "Inside. Sawyer's on the phone with you, which you know." Harlow still had the phone pressed to her ear. "I'm at the door," she said into it. "You can hang up now, baby." She heard the call end. She knocked twice. Their knock, the pattern Sawyer and Reed both knew. And the deadbolt clicked and the door opened, and Sawyer was standing there with the tablet in one hand and Reed directly behind her, holding a stick, watching the door with that particular focused expression of his. Harlow came down to their level. She put one hand on each of them. She ran a quick clinical check that she hoped looked like a hug. Nothing hurt, nothing frightened in their bodies beyond the surface tension of a situation they were too young to fully read. "You both did exactly right," she said. Sawyer accepted this as her due. Reed looked at Harlow for a moment, then at the hallway behind her, where Damien had appeared at the stairwell entrance and stopped. Reed looked at Damien. Damien looked at Reed. It lasted 2 seconds, and then Harlow stood and turned and said to Damien, "Wait downstairs," in a tone that did not invite discussion. He went. She got the kids settled back on the couch with the tablet and closed the bedroom door and came back to Darlene in the hallway. "Tell me everything," she said. Darlene told her. 2 men. One did the talking. He said he was from building management and that there was a water issue in the unit below that required access. Darlene had not been expecting maintenance and said so. The man said it was an emergency access situation and that the building had the right to enter. When she started to close the door, he put his hand in the frame, and that was when the door caught her face. She had shoved back hard enough that he stepped back. Darlene was not small, and she was not easily moved. And she had enough presence of mind to say loudly that she was calling the police. They left. "What did they look like?" Harlow said. "Ordinary." That was the thing, not like... Darlene paused, choosing words. "Not like what I would have expected if someone told me men connected to a crime organization would show up at my door." "Ordinary how?" "Business casual. One of them had a company logo on his jacket. Looked like a contractor. I almost bought it for the first 10 seconds. "Did they say anything else?" Darlene looked at her. "The one who talked. After I said I was calling the police. He looked at me for a second and then he said..." She stopped. "Darlene." He said, "Tell Ms. Bennett that the offer stands." Harlow felt the hallway go very quiet around her. "Tell Ms. Bennett," she repeated. "Yes." They knew her name, not just her location. Her name, Darlene's connection to her, the apartment number. They had done the research. This was not a message from Damien. She had been looking at Damien across a kitchen table when this happened. This was someone else. She went back downstairs. Damien was standing in the lobby. The night attendant had retreated to his desk with the instinctive reading of a situation that he wanted no part of. Damien turned when she came off the stairs. She told him what Darlene had said. All of it, including the message. The stillness in his face shifted into something she had not seen on him before. Not anger. She knew his anger, had seen it operate, knew what it looked like. This was recognition, the kind that came with its own particular grimness. "Tell Ms. Bennett the offer stands," he said. "You know what it means." It was not a question. She watched him work through something, his eyes moving to the middle distance for a moment, calculating. "There's a man named Crawford Hale," he said. "He runs the Eastern operations that Victor Rayner used to supply. When Victor's network collapsed, Hale lost significant infrastructure. He's been trying to rebuild for 2 years. Damien's jaw tightened. 14 months ago, before I found you, Hale made contact through a third party. He wanted the Asheville corridor. I declined." Harlow stared at him. "What does that have to do with..." "He came back 6 months ago with a different proposal. He wanted a partnership and he wanted it legitimate. A front business, shared distribution, enough separation that neither side could be directly connected." Damien met her eyes. I declined again. And the offer that stands is probably the third version. He said it like he was reading from something cold and factual. He found you. He knows the children are mine. He's using them as leverage to bring me to the table. The lobby was very quiet. The fluorescent light above the attendant's desk hummed at low frequency. Harlow felt the anger move through her so fast it almost came out the other side into something else entirely. He found my children, she said. A man you have history with found my children and used them to send you a message. Yes. Because you have enemies. Yes. And my being here, my being visible, made my children visible. Damien said nothing. He held her gaze and he said nothing, because there was nothing to say that was not an acknowledgement of what she was describing. I need you to leave, she said. Harlow, get away from this building. Get away from my family. Every second you stand here is a second that connects this address to whatever you are, and I have 2 4-year-old children on the 3rd floor. Her voice had not risen, but it had become something precise and cold that she recognized from the very worst moments of her life. The voice that emerged when emotion became too large to express and compressed itself instead into pure function. Go. I can protect you. You are the reason they need protecting. She held up a hand. Go, I'll call you. He went. She stood in the lobby for a moment after the front door closed. The attendant was examining something on his desk with focused intensity. She appreciated that. She went back upstairs. She spent the night on Darlene's couch. The kids slept in Darlene's bed. Darlene took the floor, and Harlow lay in the dark living room listening to the building settle around her and thinking in the systematic way she used when a situation required decisions she was not ready to make. In the morning, she called in to the clinic. First time she had done that in 3 years. Then she called Damien. He answered before the first ring completed. He had definitely not slept. I need information, she said, about Crawford Hale. Everything you have. A pause. Why? Because you're not the only one who gets to make decisions about my family's safety. Tell me what I'm dealing with. She heard him exhale slowly. Meet me, he said. No, tell me on the phone. This isn't a phone conversation. Then send me documentation. Harlow. His voice had an edge she did not often hear in it. Not anger, something more like urgency that he was controlling carefully. Hale is not a straightforward problem. If I explain this over a phone line and he has surveillance on either of our numbers, and he might, we hand him the knowledge that we're coordinating. That changes his calculation in ways I can't predict. She thought about that. She hated that he was right. 2 hours, she said. The park on Merriweather. Public. I'll be there. She arranged for Darlene to keep the kids. Darlene asked no questions, which meant she was asking all of them internally and choosing to trust Harlow's judgment, which was the most generous thing Darlene knew how to offer. The park was busy at mid-morning. Dog walkers, a few parents with strollers, a man on a bench reading something on his tablet. Harlow arrived first and sat at a picnic table near the far end of the path where she could see all 3 approach routes. Old habit. She had learned that from watching how Damien moved through spaces, the way he always took the seat with the widest sightline, and she had absorbed it without meaning to and carried it 4 years after she stopped being anywhere near him. He arrived from the east path. He sat across from her at the picnic table and put a manila folder between them. Crawford Hale is 53 years old, he said. He runs legitimate construction and logistics businesses out of Knoxville that front for distribution operations covering most of the eastern corridor from Virginia down to the Georgia line. He is not reckless. He does not use violence first. Damien paused. He uses it when he has determined it is the cleanest available option. That's a more dangerous profile. The men at Darlene's. A demonstration. He wanted me to know he could reach you. He wasn't ready to escalate further. Not yet. The message was the point. And if you go to the table with him, then he has what he wants. And he knows that reaching your family is a mechanism that works. Harlow looked at him steadily across the table. And if you don't? Damien held her gaze. Then he escalates until I do, or until he decides the cost of escalating is too high. What makes the cost too high? Pressure from my side that makes pursuing this more expensive than abandoning it. What does that look like? It looks like me moving resources I haven't moved in 2 years. He said it carefully. It looks like a version of myself I have been attempting to step back from. She understood that sentence in full. He had told her once, during those 7 months, that the thing he wanted most was to get out. Not entirely, that was not realistic, but back, further from the operational edge, into a position where the decisions he made were organizational rather than direct. He had been moving toward that when Victor Rayner dismantled everything. "Is that what you were doing?" she said. "Before all this? Stepping back?" "Trying to." He looked at the folder between them. "It's harder to do when someone reminds you what you have to lose." Harlow opened the folder. Inside were 3 pages. A brief profile of Hale, 2 surveillance photographs, a list of known associates. She read it the way she read clinical documentation, systematically, retaining the structure, looking for the thing that didn't fit. She found it on the 3rd page, one name in the associate list that she recognized. She went very still. "Damien," she said. "What?" She pointed to the name without touching the page. He looked at it. His expression did not change visibly, but something around his eyes tightened. "Marcus Dre," she said. "He was in your organization." "Former. He left 8 months ago. I assumed he went independent." "He didn't go independent." She kept her voice level. "He came to Asheville. He works at the clinic. He's been there for 6 months." She looked up. "He processes patient intake. He has access to the full administrative directory." Damien's chair scraped back 2 inches. Not a full movement, just the beginning of one, controlled. "He knows where you work," he said. "He knows where I work. He knows my schedule. He has access to the records of every patient I see, and pediatric patient records include emergency contact information and school enrollment data." Her voice stayed level, completely level, the compressed function voice. "He knows where my children go to school. He's had that information for 6 months. The park sounds continued around them. A dog barking somewhere, the strollers moving along the path, ordinary morning. It felt obscene how ordinary it was. "He's Hale's placement," Damien said. "He was watching us before you even found me." She felt it settle through her in layers. "The conference where someone recognized me. That was 14 months ago, you said. 6 months later, Dre appears at the clinic. He wasn't reacting to your search. He was already in position. Hale knew about you before I did. Hale has known about my children longer than you have." She closed the folder. Her hands were completely steady. She was aware of them as a separate fact, the way you were aware of your own pulse during a controlled emergency. Present, functional, operating outside the emotional register that was currently running at frequencies she could not afford to feel yet. This was never about delivering a message to you. The school, Darlene's apartment, those were tests. He was checking what I would do, who I would call, how fast you would appear. Damien said nothing for a moment. "He was watching to see if we would make contact," Damien said. "And we did. Last night I called you within 3 minutes of getting off the phone with the administrator. You were at my house in under an hour. We drove to Darlene's building together." She looked at him. "We handed him the confirmation he needed. He knows we're in contact. He knows you'll protect us, which means he knows exactly what to threaten." The morning light moved through the park. A child on the far path laughed at something. Damien's face had become something she could not fully read, which had never happened before. She had always been able to read him. That was the thing about them, the thing that had made those 7 months feel like something real. She could read him, and he could read her, and it had felt like a language they had invented together. What she was reading now was a man reassembling something, putting himself back into a shape he had apparently been trying to leave behind. "I need to pull Dre today," he said, "before he reports last night's meeting. If you pull him, Hale knows we've identified the connection. If I don't, Hale has an active placement with access to everything about your life." "There's a third option," she said. He looked at her. "I pull him," she said. "Through the clinic. A compliance audit. Patient data irregularities. I can flag his access records and have his credentials suspended within the hour. It reads as administrative. Nothing that comes back to you." Damien was quiet for a beat. "You'd do that." "I'd do that to protect my children." She held his gaze. Don't make it more than that. She pulled out her phone. She made 2 calls, the clinic director and the IT compliance officer. She kept both conversations clean and professional. She cited a routine audit trigger on a new administrative employee's access pattern. The compliance officer said he would have credentials suspended within 40 minutes pending review. The clinic director said she appreciated Harlow flagging it. Harlow ended the second call and put the phone on the table. She looked at Damien. There's something you haven't told me, she said. Not an accusation, an observation delivered with the same flat accuracy she used for everything now. About Hale. About why this is specifically now. Damien looked at the folder. The partnership he proposed 6 months ago, he said. It wasn't just the Asheville corridor. He wanted access to a distribution network I control that runs through 3 state lines. It's worth... He stopped. It's significant. That's not what you were about to say. He looked up at her. You were going to say something else, she said. Before you edited it. A long beat. Hale has a deadline, Damien said. He's under pressure from his own backers to expand the operation or return their investment. He has until the end of the month. He held her gaze. That's 11 days. 11 days. The number sat in the air between them like a physical object. He's going to escalate, she said. Yes. Before the end of the month. Yes. Which means my children are not safe in Asheville. They're not safe anywhere that connects to me while he has a deadline and nothing to lose. Damien was very still. I can move you, he said. Tonight. Somewhere he doesn't have a thread to pull. You want to relocate my family. Temporarily. Until I can close this. Close it how? He held her gaze and did not answer, which was an answer. She stood up from the picnic table. She picked up the folder. She looked down at him. I'm going to go back to my sister's apartment, she said. I'm going to pack my children's things, and then you're going to tell me, plainly, completely, without editing it for my benefit, exactly what you intend to do about Crawford Hale. She let that sit for a moment. Because whatever it is, I need to know what kind of world I'm deciding to bring my children back into. She walked away from the table. She was halfway down the path when she heard him stand, and then his voice, controlled, carrying just far enough to reach her. Harlow. She stopped but did not turn. There's one more thing, he said, about Dre. Something in how he said it made her turn. Damien was still at the table, the folder in his hand, his face holding something that looked like the very last version of a thing he had been hoping he would not have to say. Dre wasn't placed by Hale 6 months ago, he said. The timeline doesn't hold. I ran it while you were on the phone. He set the folder on the table. Marcus Dre left my organization 8 months ago. He arrived at your clinic 6 months ago. The conference where someone recognized you was 14 months ago. She waited. The gap is 2 months, Damien said, between the conference and when Dre arrived. I've been trying to figure out how Hale connected the recognition to your location in 2 months, when it took my people a year to run down the same lead. He paused. He didn't. He couldn't have. The recognition at the conference, the person who reported seeing you there and passed it back through the chain, that person wasn't connected to Hale. Harlow went very still. That person, Damien said quietly, was connected to me. The park sounds faded. Someone in my organization reported your location to me, he said, and then, before I acted on it, that same person sold the information to Hale. The morning light sat flat and white on the path between them. Someone inside your organization, she said slowly, sold my location, sold my children's location, to a man with a deadline and nothing to lose. Yes. And you don't know who. He picked up the folder. I didn't, he said, until about 4 minutes ago. He turned the folder and held it out toward her, open to the associate list on the 3rd page. His finger rested beside a name she had not looked at closely before, a name 2 lines above Marcus Dre's. She looked at the name. The ground did not shift, the morning did not change, but something inside her, the carefully constructed architecture of the last 4 years, the walls and the plans and the precise measurements of what was safe and what was not, came apart in the space of reading 7 letters. The name was Valentina Voss, his mother. She did not say anything for a long time. The folder was still in Damien's hand, held out toward her, and she was looking at the name on the third page, and the morning moved around her. The dog walker circling back, a cloud crossing the sun, the ordinary machinery of a Tuesday in a public park. And none of it touched her because she was somewhere else entirely, running the timeline backward with the precision of someone who had spent 4 years learning to survive by understanding sequences. Valentina Voss. His mother had gone to the children's school 3 days ago, had stood at the front desk and given her name without hesitation, had tried to walk out with Sawyer and Reed as if they were something she already owned. Harlow had read it as a power move, a grandmother asserting claim, impulsive, boundary crossing, the kind of thing a woman did when she felt entitled to something and did not believe rules applied to her. She had not read it as a woman who had known about those children for months. She had not read it as a woman who had already sold their location to a man with 11 days and nothing to lose. She took the folder from Damien's hand. She looked at the name again. Then she closed the folder and held it against her chest and looked at him. His face was doing something she had never seen it do. In 7 months of knowing him, through every negotiation she had watched from the periphery, through every moment of pressure she had seen him absorb without visible cost, she had never seen him look like this. He was not a man who was accustomed to being ambushed by his own bloodline, and he did not have a ready expression for it. "How certain," she said. "The timing is the only reading that holds," he said. "Anyone else in the organization would have had to piece together your location from the conference sighting. She already knew. She went to the school 3 days ago with a certainty that only comes from prior knowledge." "She went there to see them," Harlow said. "Yes." "Before you did." "Yes." Harlow breathed in through her nose, slow and deliberate. "She sold my children's location to Crawford Hale, and then she went to their school to look at them." Damien said nothing. He had gone back to that absolute stillness, but it was different from before. Before it had been control. Now it was something closer to a man standing at the exact edge of something and choosing, with every muscle he had, not to move. "Where is she?" Harlow said. "At the house in Biltmore. She stays there when she's in Asheville." Something in Harlow's chest tightened into a single hard point. "Take me there," she said. "Harlow, take me there or I'll find it myself." She held his gaze. "I will not ask twice." He took her there. The house in Biltmore was exactly what she would have expected from Valentina Voss. Substantial, understated, the kind of wealth that did not announce itself because it did not need to. Stone exterior, iron gate, a garden that had been maintained through the winter with careful professional attention. Damien punched the gate code without hesitating. The gate swung open. They walked to the front door. He used a key. The entrance hall was cool and quiet. Polished floors, a side table with fresh flowers, a painting she did not look at. Damien called out once. "Mother!" A beat. Then footsteps from the back of the house, unhurried. The footsteps of a woman who moved through her own space with total ownership. Valentina Voss appeared in the entrance to the sitting room. She was 71 years old, small, with white hair pulled back and the particular posture of a woman who had learned long ago that how you held yourself was the first argument you made. She looked at Damien. Then she looked at Harlow. Her expression did not change. That was the thing that hit Harlow hardest. Not anger, not guilt, not even the defensive construction of a lie being assembled in real time. Valentina looked at her with the face of someone who had already decided how this conversation would go and was simply waiting for the other parties to catch up. "You knew," Harlow said. "Sit down," Valentina said. To Damien, not to Harlow. "Answer her," Damien said. A pause. Valentina moved to the sitting room and sat in the chair nearest the window, the one with the best light, the one that put her face in the most favorable position. Even now. Even in this. "I found out about the children 9 months ago," Valentina said. "I had my own people looking. Damien's search was too slow." "You had your own people looking," Harlow said. "I had grandchildren I did not know about. Yes." Valentina's voice was precise. Not cold exactly. Something more controlled than cold. "When I found them, I made a decision." "You made a decision," Damien said. His voice had dropped to a register Harlow had never heard from him. Low and absolutely flat, and very careful, the way a person's voice went when it was the last thing holding them together. Crawford Hale had been making overtures for 2 years, Valentina said. You kept refusing him. His proposal was sound. It would have expanded the organization's reach considerably and legitimized 3 operations that are currently exposed. Inc. She spoke as if she were presenting a business case, as if this were a board meeting and not her son standing in her sitting room with his fists open at his sides. The information I had about the woman and the children was leverage. I used it. The room was very quiet. You sold my children, Harlow said. I sold information. Valentina's eyes moved to her. A location, a connection, nothing that would have harmed them if Damien had simply agreed to meet with Hale. You sent men to my sister's apartment, Harlow said, with my children inside. That was Hale's escalation. I did not authorize. You handed him the instrument. Harlow's voice had gone to that compressed function register, and she was aware of it, using it deliberately now because the alternative was something she could not afford in this room right now. You gave him the address, the school, my sister's name, my clinic. You gave him everything he needed to put my children at risk. Valentina looked at her with an expression that was almost, not quite, but almost, the closest thing to discomfort she was apparently capable of generating. The children were never in actual danger. Hale's objective was to bring Damien to the table, not to. They were 4 years old in a locked room while men pushed through a door frame, Harlow said. Do not tell me what they were or were not in. Silence. Damien had not moved from the entrance to the sitting room. He stood there with his hands open at his sides, and Harlow could see in the quality of his stillness exactly how much effort that required. Damien, Valentina said. Her voice shifted slightly, not softening, recalibrating, addressing him now, redirecting. What I did served the organization. What Hale is offering, don't. His voice stopped her mid-sentence. The partnership would have... Don't. He took one step into the sitting room, just one. You found my children before I did. You knew they existed. You knew where they were. And you used them as a bargaining chip before I ever had the chance to know them. I was protecting the organization's future, Valentina said. You were protecting your idea of what this family should be, Damien said, which has never included anything you didn't control. The word landed in the room between them. Valentina's posture shifted. Micro-movement, barely visible, but there. The first crack in the surface. I need your phone, Damien said. Excuse me. Your phone. All of them. Whatever you used to communicate with Hale's people. He held out his hand. Now. Valentina looked at him for a long moment. Something moved behind her eyes. The calculation of a woman who had been in the Voss organization since before Damien was born, who had watched it built and had built parts of it herself, who understood better than most what it meant when Damien's voice went to that particular register. She reached into the pocket of her jacket and placed 2 phones on the side table. Damien picked them up. He handed them to Harlow without looking away from his mother. Go to the car, he said to Harlow. Wait for me. Harlow looked at Valentina. Valentina looked back at her with an expression that was too complicated to read cleanly. Guilt that had not yet acknowledged itself as guilt, and something older underneath it. Something that looked like the face of a woman who loved her son in the only way she had ever known how, which was to control the world around him until it matched her idea of his safety. Harlow turned and walked out. She sat in the passenger seat of Damien's car for 12 minutes. She knew because she watched the dashboard clock. She did not look at the phones. She did not look at the house. She looked at the gate and breathed and let her mind do the thing it needed to do, which was assemble the next sequence of necessary actions in order of priority. Get the children out of Asheville. That was first. Close the Hale situation before his deadline. That was second. Everything else came after. Damien came out of the house at the 12-minute mark. He walked to the car with the controlled pace of a man who had done something in that sitting room that he was not going to describe, and had made peace with it before he came through the door. He got in. He started the engine. He drove for 3 blocks before he spoke. She won't contact Hale again, he said. Harlow did not ask how he knew. She did not ask what had been said in those 12 minutes. Some things she understood from the world she had chosen to walk away from, and she held them at arm's length and did not name them. We have 10 days, she said. Yes. What do you need to close it? He drove. He thought. He said, I need Hale to believe the partnership is happening, long enough to get him to a meeting. And at the meeting, he'll bring his financial infrastructure. He always does. He needs to show capability when he closes a deal. If I can get him in a room with his exposure visible, I have enough to hand to 3 federal contacts who have been building a case on his operations for 2 years. He glanced at her. It ends Hale without a shot. You have federal contacts. I have been carefully building toward a version of this life that does not require the other version, he said. That includes relationships that are useful in a different way. She looked at him. 7 months of knowing him, and she had not known that. He had been moving towards something even then, not just the stepping back from the operational edge, but something more deliberate. She filed it without comment. The meeting has to happen in the next 6 days, she said, before his deadline creates desperation. Agreed. I want the children out of Asheville today. Darlene, too. I have a property in the mountains outside Boone. No connection to the organization. It's held through 3 independent entities. No one has that thread. Darlene won't go easily. No, he agreed, but she'll go for the kids. He was right about that. Darlene went with the specific expression of a woman filing a comprehensive objection that she would deliver in full at a later date, and Harlow loved her for it. By 4 in the afternoon, Darlene and the kids were in a car with 2 of Damien's people. Not the operational kind, the administrative kind, which was the distinction that mattered, heading north toward Boone. Sawyer asked where they were going. Darlene told her they were going to a house in the mountains. Sawyer asked if there would be good cereal. Reed, in the back seat beside her, was holding a stick he had brought from the backyard. He looked out the window and said nothing. Harlow watched the car leave from Darlene's street. Damien stood beside her. The contact meeting is set for tomorrow morning, he said. I briefed them tonight. Where's the proposed location for Hale? I'll offer him the Meridian building. Neutral ground by his assessment. It's the legitimate front. He'll feel it reduces his exposure. He won't know I've had 3 weeks to prepare it. He'll bring security. He always brings 4. I'll have the federal team in position outside before he arrives. He paused. This works if Hale believes he's closing the deal. If he arrives suspicious, it doesn't work. What makes him believe it? Damien looked at her. I tell him I'm bringing the children's mother. Harlow looked back at him. He's been watching us, Damien said. He knows we're in contact. He knows I'm motivated to protect you and the kids. If I bring you to the meeting, it reads as good faith. It reads as me demonstrating that I have settled the personal situation and I'm ready to do business. You want to use me as a prop? I want to use the situation he created, Damien said. He manufactured this leverage. I'm proposing we use his own tool against him. Harlow breathed. She thought about sitting on a gas station floor 4 years ago. She thought about the yellow door. She thought about Reed in the back seat of a car heading for the mountains, holding a stick, looking out the window with his careful eyes. What do I need to do? She said. The next morning came in gray and cold. Harlow had slept 3 hours at the Yellow House, which she had gone back to alone, because she needed 1 night in her own space before whatever today became. She stood at the kitchen table at 5:40 in the morning with her hands flat on the surface and looked at the room. Sawyer's drawing, Reed's stones in the dish, the gas stove with the difficult burner, and she let herself feel what she was going to do today. Then she stopped feeling it and started doing it. Damien picked her up at 7. He was wearing the charcoal jacket again. She was wearing her clinic clothes, practical, not impressive, which was deliberate. She did not want to look like she was performing anything. The Meridian building was a 12-story tower in the center of Asheville's business district. Glass and steel, exactly what it appeared to be from the outside. They went up in the elevator together, and Harlow watched the numbers rise and thought about the last time she had been in an elevator like this, going up to a study on the 14th floor of a different tower, 4 years and a lifetime ago. The conference room was on the 10th floor, large windows, a long table. Damien's 2 administrative staff were already there. At the other end of the table, by the windows, 3 people she did not know, 2 men and a woman, all in business clothes, who she understood without introduction to be the federal contacts. They nodded at her. She nodded back. At 8:15, Damien's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. He's in the building. The room shifted. The energy changed. Not visibly, not dramatically, but she felt it the way she felt the moment before a difficult diagnosis landed in a waiting room. The intake of something that was about to become real. Harlow sat in the chair Damien had placed for her. Midpoint of the table, slightly back, visible but not central. Observer position, witness position. Crawford Hale walked in at 8:20 with 4 men behind him, exactly as predicted, and he was, she had not expected this, completely ordinary looking. 53, medium build, a gray suit, a watchful face that smiled easily and meant none of it. He looked like the regional manager of something. He looked like a man you would not notice in an airport. He looked at Damien. He looked at Harlow. "Ms. Bennett," he said, like he already knew her, like they were at a second meeting and not a first. "Mr. Hale," she said. He sat across from Damien. His 4 men arranged themselves at the edges of the room. He placed a leather folder on the table and did not open it. "I'm glad we got here," he said to Damien. "I was starting to think you needed more persuasion." "You made your point," Damien said. "My point was about efficiency." Hale's smile did not reach the level of warmth. "I don't like to waste time. I assume you don't either." "Open the folder," Damien said. Hale looked at him for a moment, reading the room, doing what that kind of man did, assembling the signals. Then he opened the folder. He began to lay out the structure of the proposal. He got 4 minutes into it. The door opened. Not the main door. The secondary access at the far end of the room, the one Harlow had noted when she came in and had not looked at again. It opened, and 2 people entered in quick succession, and the 4 men Hale had brought shifted, hands moving, weight shifting, and then stopped when they saw the credentials. Federal agents. Not the contacts already in the room. A second team she had not known about, which meant Damien had not told her everything, which she was going to address at a later time. Hale looked at the folder in front of him. He looked at the financial documentation he had just laid on the table. He looked at Damien. "You brought me in to document myself," he said. Not a question. His voice was perfectly level and held a specific quality she recognized, the absolute zero of a man recalculating everything while simultaneously refusing to show the cost of it. "You brought yourself in," Damien said. "You built the pressure that put us in this room. I just chose what kind of room it would be." Hale was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Harlow, and something in his face shifted, not toward her exactly, but in her direction, with the specific attention of a man identifying what he considered to be the variable he had miscalculated. "You were the piece I got wrong," he said. Harlow held his gaze. "You built your leverage on a woman you thought would run," she said. "I don't run." Hale looked at her for another moment. Then one of the federal agents said his name, and the room began its next sequence, and Hale stood and his 4 men stood, and the careful machinery of consequence began to move. But Hale, even then, even in that moment, looked back at Harlow once more as they led him toward the door, and what she saw in his face was not anger and not defeat. It was something she did not like, an assessment, a calculation that had not yet completed itself. "Ms. Bennett," he said. The agent beside him said his name sharply. Hale's eyes held hers for one more second. "You should know," he said, "that I'm not the only one who's been watching your family." The door closed behind him. The room went very still. Harlow looked at Damien across the table. He was already on his feet, already reaching for his phone, his face set in the expression she now recognized as the operational mode, past emotion, past calculation, into pure action. His phone rang before he dialed. He answered it. She watched his face as he listened. She watched it change. He lowered the phone slowly and looked at her across the table, and what she saw in his expression then, what she read with the same clinical accuracy she had been reading him since the moment she opened the yellow door, was the specific face of a man who was about to say something that would break the last thing standing between her and the full weight of what they were still inside. "Harlow," he said. "The house in Boone." "What happened?" Harlow said. Her voice came out flat and immediate, The way her voice always went when the thing she feared most had already begun to take shape, and the only functional response was to move through it rather than toward it. Damien had the phone pressed to his ear again. He held up one hand, not to silence her, but the gesture of a man trying to hear two things at once, the voice on the phone and the voice of his own calculation running underneath it. His face was doing the thing she had learned to read in the last 4 days. The controlled surface with the fracture lines underneath. He lowered the phone. "The car is fine," he said. "Darlene and the kids are fine." She felt the breath leave her body. "But someone was at the property before they arrived," he said. "The groundskeeper found signs of entry through the back access. Recent, within the last 24 hours. The conference room had gone quiet around them. The federal agents were doing what they needed to do with the documentation Hale had placed on the table, moving efficiently, talking in low voices. None of it touched Harlow right now. "Someone knew about the Boone property," she said. "Yes. You said it was clean." "I believed it was clean." He held her gaze. "The entry was through a service route that appears on county land survey records. Anyone with access to the property registration chain could have mapped it." He paused. "It was not Hale. His people are accounted for. The timing of the entry doesn't match." "Then who?" He did not answer immediately. That gap, that specific gap between her question and his silence, told her more than the answer would. "Damien." She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. The agents were at the far end of the room now, absorbed. Who else knew about that property? "2 people," he said. "One of them is on the phone with me right now." He paused. "The other one is my mother." Harlow looked at him. "She's been to that property 3 times, he said. "I took her there 2 years ago. She knew the access routes. She knew the registration structure." He stopped. "I told her last night that I was moving you and the children. I did not tell her where, but she knows my inventory well enough to make an educated guess." "You told her we were being moved." "I told her the children were safe. I thought—" He stopped. "I thought what I said to her in that sitting room would be the end of it." Harlow turned away from him. She put her hands flat on the conference table and looked at the surface and breathed 3 times, slowly, and let the full shape of it assemble in front of her. Valentina Voss had sold her grandchildren's location to Crawford Hale 9 months ago. When Hale was neutralized, when the table was pulled away from her, she had not stopped. She had done what a person did when they could no longer use external leverage. She had reached for whatever was left within her own reach. "She's not protecting the organization," Harlow said, without turning around. "She never was. She's protecting her idea of what this family owes her." Damien said nothing. "She couldn't control Victor," Harlow said. "Victor used her structure to run his scheme, and she didn't see it or she didn't stop it. And when that collapsed, she lost the influence she'd built. And then you came looking for me and she saw it happening again. You choosing something that wasn't hers to arrange." She straightened, turned around. "She didn't sell my location to Hale because of the organization. She sold it because she needed you to stay in the position she could manage, and my existence and my children's existence threatened that." The room was quiet enough that she could hear one of the federal agents on a radio at the far end. Damien looked like a man standing at the bottom of something very deep. His face had gone past the fracture line version, past the controlled surface entirely, into something more raw and more tired than she had ever seen on him. "I need to find her," he said. "Where would she go?" "There's a property outside Brevard, an hour from here. It's not in the organization's name. It's personal, registered to a holding company she set up in the early years." He moved toward the door. "She'd go somewhere she felt outside my reach." Harlow picked up her jacket from the back of the chair. "You're not coming," he said. "My children are in those mountains because of her. Do not tell me where I'm going." He looked at her for one long moment. Then he walked out and she followed him. The drive to Brevard was 53 minutes. Damien drove it in 40. Harlow sat in the passenger seat and did not fill the silence, and neither did he. And after the first 10 minutes, she understood that they had moved past the phase where words were the primary instrument. They were in a different register now. The register that came after everything had been said. The property outside Brevard sat on a hillside at the end of a gravel road with a tree line on 3 sides and a view of the valley on the 4th. The house was stone and cedar, modest by Valentina's standards, but that was deliberate. It was the kind of place that did not attract attention, a place to disappear into. The lights were on inside. Damien parked at the end of the drive and got out without turning off the engine. Harlow got out on her side. The morning air was cold up here, genuinely cold, and she could see her breath. The gravel under her feet made small sounds as they walked. He did not knock. He had a key for this one, too. Valentina was in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter with a cup of coffee in both hands, facing the window that looked out at the valley, and she did not turn when they came in. She had heard the car. She had heard the gravel. She had chosen not to move, and that choice, the stillness of a woman who had decided that what was coming, and she would receive it standing rather than running, told Harlow something about Valentina Voss that she had not understood before. She was not afraid. She was not sorry. She was simply a woman who had made decisions she believed in and was now prepared to defend them. Or not defend them, just hold them. Damien stopped in the kitchen entrance. Valentina turned. She looked at her son first, the long, thorough look of a mother taking inventory. Then she looked at Harlow. Her expression was impossible to read cleanly. Not defiance, not guilt, something in between that had its own specific weight. "The property in Boone," Damien said. Valentina set her coffee cup down on the counter. "I wanted to know if it was secure," she said. "You went to scope a location where you were sending my children," Harlow said. "I went to assess whether the location your father chose for you was adequate." She addressed this to an imaginary Sawyer and Reed, not to Harlow, speaking past her, which was deliberate, which was the kind of move that told you everything about how this woman categorized the people in her son's life. "Look at me," Harlow said. Valentina's eyes moved to her. Not at him. Not at the window. At me. Harlow held her gaze. "You sold my children's location to a man who sent people to push through my sister's door while my kids were inside. You did that. Not Hale, not Victor Rayner. You." Valentina's jaw shifted. Micro-movement, the first one. "I made a business decision that I believed would resolve the situation more efficiently than—" "Stop." Harlow's voice did not rise. It did the opposite. "Stop explaining it like it was a board decision. You found out you had grandchildren, and your first move was to use them. That is what happened. Say it." The kitchen was very quiet. The valley outside the window was full of morning light. Valentina was quiet for a moment. "I found out I had grandchildren," she said finally, "and I understood immediately that if Damien found you before the Hale situation was resolved, the attention it would bring would make you all targets." She paused. "I was not wrong about that." "You created the target," Harlow said. "Hale didn't find us. You handed us to him. I gave him a location. I gave him a connection. I believed he would use it as leverage to bring Damien to the table, that they would reach an agreement, and that afterward—" "Afterward what?" Damien said. The question came out quietly. Valentina looked at her son. "Afterward, the situation would be stable," she said. "And you could—" She stopped. "What?" he said. "I could what?" "You could meet them," she said. "Your children, on stable ground, without the organization in crisis around you." The sentence sat in the kitchen between all three of them. Harlow looked at this woman, 71 years old, coffee going cold on the counter, standing in a house built for disappearing, and felt something she had not expected. Not softening, not forgiveness, but understanding, the clinical kind, the kind that did not require approval or agreement. She understood what she was looking at. A woman who loved her son in the only shape she knew how to love in, which was a shape built out of control and protection and the absolute conviction that she always knew better. A woman who had looked at her grandchildren as a problem to be solved rather than people to be known, because that was the only tool she had. A woman who had broken something she might have had in order to manage something she was afraid of. Harlow had seen that before. Not in crime families, not in power structures. In examination rooms, in parent conferences, in waiting rooms where people made catastrophic decisions for their children out of love that had curdled into fear. It did not excuse it. Understanding was not excuse. But it was true. You need to leave Asheville, Harlow said. Valentina looked at her. Not permanently. I'm not in a position to make that demand, and I wouldn't if I could. Harlow held her gaze. But for now, for the next 6 months, you need to not be in the same city as my children. You don't have the authority. I have every authority, Harlow said. They are my children. They live in my house. You come near them when I decide you come near them, and right now I am deciding you don't. She paused. That's not punishment. It's a boundary. When you can demonstrate that you understand the difference between protecting someone and using them, when I can see that, we'll have a different conversation. Valentina looked at Damien. Damien looked at his mother. She's right, he said. It was 3 words, quiet, unhurried, unequivocal. No apology in them, no performance, no softening for the sake of the relationship between them. Just a statement of fact from a man who had chosen and was finished being ambivalent about the choice. Valentina's face did something then. Something Harlow had not seen it do in any of the previous encounters. Not at the school, not in the Biltmore sitting room, not now until this moment. It showed the cost of something. The specific face of a person who has held a position long enough that releasing it feels like a physical event. She looked at her son for a long time. I only ever wanted you to be safe, she said. I know, he said. Everything I did, I know, he said again, and it doesn't change what it was. She picked up her coffee cup. She turned back to the window. Outside, the valley was full of light, the kind that came in the late morning when the cloud cover broke and everything came through clean and cold and clear. I'll go to the Savannah property, she said. Her voice was steady. I'll be there when you need to reach me. Damien nodded once. He and Harlow walked back out to the car, the gravel under their feet, the cold air, the tree line standing still on 3 sides. They drove back toward Asheville mostly without speaking, and then at some point, somewhere in the mountain road between Brevard and the highway, Harlow said, We need to go get our kids. She heard herself say our and did not take it back. Damien said nothing. But something in the set of his shoulders changed, a fraction, the way a held thing released slightly when it understood it was allowed to. They drove north to Boone. The house Damien had rented was more than she expected. She had been picturing a functional safe house, utilitarian, temporary. What she found was a wood and glass structure set into the hillside with a porch that faced the mountain and a large common room with a fireplace someone had already lit. Darlene opened the door before they knocked. She looked at Harlow. She looked at Damien. She looked back at Harlow. I have questions, she said. I know, Harlow said. A lot of questions. I know, later. Darlene stepped back and let them in. The kids were at the kitchen table. Reed was arranging sticks. He had collected new ones from somewhere on the property, a small pile of them sorted by length. And Sawyer was drawing something with extreme concentration, her tongue pressed between her teeth. They both looked up when the door opened. Sawyer dropped her crayon. Mom. She was off the chair in a single motion, the way children moved when they had been waiting longer than their patience had structure for, pure kinetic relief. She hit Harlow at knee height, and Harlow caught her and held her, her face going into Sawyer's hair, and she stayed there for a moment. Reed did not get off his chair immediately. He watched. He watched Harlow, and then he watched Damien, who had stopped just inside the door and was standing with his hands loose at his sides and his face doing the open, unguarded thing it had done when she showed him the photograph in the kitchen. Reed looked at him for a long moment. Then he picked up one of the sticks from his collection, a medium one, smooth, slightly curved, and got down from his chair and walked across the kitchen to where Damien stood. He held the stick out. Damien looked at it. He looked at Reed. He crouched down to Reed's level. For me? He said. Reed looked at him with those careful eyes. It's a good one, Reed said. I already checked. Damien took the stick. He held it in both hands and looked at it seriously, the way you looked at something when someone gave it to you meaning it. It's the best one I've seen, Damien said. Reed looked at him for another moment. Then he went back to the table and his remaining sticks. Harlow watched the whole thing with Sawyer still attached to her side. She felt something move through her that she did not have a clean name for. Not happiness exactly, or not only that, something more comprehensive. The way a very long piece of work felt when the last part of it aligned with everything that had come before. The rest of that day moved slowly, which was what they all needed. Darlene made food. She had found a grocery delivery in the area, which was very Darlene, solving the practical problem before anyone asked. And they ate at the big kitchen table, and Sawyer talked through most of the meal with the fluency of a child who had been understimulated for 18 hours and had opinions about every subject. Reed ate carefully and watched Damien with periodic sideways attention, the way he watched everything new, cataloging, not yet decided. After dinner, Sawyer demanded a story, and Damien told her one, improvised, about a girl who could argue with weather systems until they changed their minds. Sawyer considered it critically and said the ending needed more winning. Damien revised the ending. Sawyer accepted the revision. Reed fell asleep on the couch without ceremony, one of his sticks in his hand, and Damien carried him to the bedroom with the careful precision of a man who had never done it before and understood the importance of doing it right. He came back out to the porch, where Harlow was standing with her coffee, looking at the mountain. He stood beside her. They stood there for a while without talking. The mountain was dark now except for the star scatter and the distant light of a town somewhere in the valley below. "The federal case," Harlow said. "It moves forward without my involvement. The documentation Hale brought to that table is enough on its own. And your exposure. The arrangement I have been building with the federal contacts for the last 18 months includes a comprehensive accounting of my own operations in exchange for cooperation." He paused. "It is not immunity, but it is a path." She held her coffee in both hands, breathed. "How long?" she said. "The process takes years," he said. "There's no clean ending to it. There's just a direction, and then work." That she understood. That was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her about the shape of a life being rebuilt. Not a clean ending, just a direction and then work. "I'm not moving back to the city," she said. "I know. Asheville is my home, my clinic, my sister, the yellow door. I built it. I'm not leaving it because of any of this." "I know," he said again. "If you want to be part of this..." She stopped, started again. "If you want to be part of their lives, you find a way to be here. Not permanently, not right away, but here, consistently. That means showing up when you say you will. It means Reed giving you a stick is not the end of the work. It's the beginning." "Yes," he said. "It means when something is hard between us, we don't disappear, either of us." She looked at him. "I need you to understand that I mean myself in that too. I am not easy. I have been building walls for so long, I sometimes can't tell them from the furniture." Something moved across his face that was almost a smile but came from somewhere too serious to be only that. "I know," he said. "I'm not forgiving you tonight," she said. "I want to be clear about that. What happened 4 years ago, what you did, that's not resolved by this week. That's going to take time, and it's going to take you not flinching when it comes up, and it will come up." "Yes," he said, "but I'm not shutting the door either." She looked back at the mountain. "That's the best I have right now. Not shutting the door." He nodded. He looked at the mountain too. "It's enough," he said. They stood there a while longer. The cold came in from the tree line gradually, the way mountain cold did, settling into your jacket before you noticed it. Harlow finished her coffee. She thought about calling Darlene to talk about the timeline for getting back to Asheville, about the clinic schedule, about whether Sawyer's winter boots still fit or whether she had grown out of them again. She thought about the gas stove burner that needed 2 attempts. She thought about the yellow door. She thought about a gas station bathroom in Tennessee and a flickering light and the weight of a future she had not planned, held in both hands. She had built something out of that night. She had built the yellow door and the crabapple tree and Darlene's soup and 2 children who were now asleep 20 feet away, one of them holding a stick he had given to a stranger because something in his careful 4-year-old assessment had decided it was the right move. That was her work. That was what she had made. Nobody had given it to her. Nobody had underwritten it or protected her into it, or made it easier than it was. She had taken the broken pieces of one night in Tennessee and built them into something real, one administrative task at a time, one clinic shift at a time, one difficult morning at a time. And she was still here. Damien said quietly without preamble, "Thank you." She looked at him. "For not telling them I didn't exist," he said. "You could have. You would have been justified. But you left the door open." She looked at him for a moment. "I left the yellow door open," she said. He understood what she meant. She could see it. She went inside. The house was quiet now, the fire in the common room burning down to orange coals. Darlene's light off in the back bedroom. Harlow stood in the kitchen for a moment, looking at the space. Unfamiliar, borrowed, not hers. She thought about home. She thought about walking back into the yellow house in a day or two, putting her keys on the counter, hearing Sawyer immediately demand something and Reed appear in the doorway with whatever he was currently carrying. She thought about the gas stove. She thought about the crabapple tree coming back in spring. She thought about the months ahead, the things that would be hard and the things that would require more from her than she currently felt capable of, and the things that would surprise her the way good things sometimes did, quietly, without announcement. She did not know how it would go. Nobody did. The future was not a thing you controlled. She had learned that in a gas station bathroom. She had learned it in a labor room. She had learned it in a conference room 10 floors up, while a man with tired eyes laid his exposure on a table because he had miscalculated what kind of woman she was. You made the decisions in front of you. You showed up for the people in your house. You left the door open when the right door deserved to stay open, and you held the line on the ones that didn't. She turned off the kitchen light. She stood for a moment in the dark, listening to the mountain quiet around the house. The complete particular silence of altitude and trees and distance from everything ordinary. Then she said it. Not out loud, inside in the place where she kept the decisions that counted. Okay, figure it out. Because she always did. And in the morning, she drove her children home. The yellow door was exactly where she had left it, catching the early light the way it always did, the paint slightly weathered at the lower right corner where Reed had tested it with a stick sometime last summer, and she had not gotten around to touching it up. She stood on the front walk with Sawyer's hand in one hand and Reed's hand in the other, looking at it. Sawyer said, "Can we have the good cereal?" "Yes," Harlow said. Reed looked at the door, then he looked up at Harlow. "We're home," he said. "Yeah," she said. "We're home." She opened the yellow door and walked her children inside, and the morning came in behind them, and the house received them the way a house received the people who had earned it. Without ceremony, without fanfare, just solid and present and exactly enough.